Everyone, give me 1 second and I will press my little thing. Okay, there we go. I'm kind of gonna set you up. Hopefully you can see me and everything will be okay. Okay, so this is my international culture photo essay project, and I decided to choose Scotland. I've always been interested in Scotland, and then when this project came up, I was like, you know what, we're gonna do it. So, like I said before, the country I decided to choose is Scotland. This country is part of the United Kingdom, and the name Scotland comes from the Latin word Scotia, land of Scots. That's what it means. Now we're going to move on to the customs and heritage. One of the traditional customs is called, like I said, I'm going to say this right now before I go any further. I'm sorry with the pronunciation. I'm trying my best. I know I'm not going to pronounce everything amazingly, but again, I'm going to try my best, and I'm sorry if I do not get everything right. But one of the traditional customs is called Seldith, which means visit. It means visit, and it is a social occasion that includes storytelling and music. This traditional custom is now commonly this custom's more in kind of like rural areas rather than in the bigger cities in Scotland, and the gathering also includes dancing. So dancing, music, storytelling, just different things. Food is also has a big impact in Scotland. Some of the common foods you may see is Angus beef, shortbread, scones, and also cheese. And I thought this was really interesting because I know Scotland is very whiskey oriented, or they're very known for their whiskey. So whiskey, which comes from the Gaelic usage Beth, meaning water of life. Again, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, but whiskey can first be traced back to the 15th century. However, many suspect that it could be traced back even further than that, and it is also one of Scotland's leading exports. I think that's very telling of how history is, because I know not everything is written down, not everything is told exactly, but they just discovered, or historians can just trace it back that farther. I think it's interesting, like, that it's more than likely they've been drinking this for years and years and years, longer before they could even trace it back. And now we're going to talk about their language. So in Scotland now, most of the language spoken is English. However, the Scots language and Scottish Gaelic still have a vast influence. They do have immigrants in Scotland as well, and it is a good thing that their parliament and their kind of government is able to accommodate them. So it would be kind of like certain paperworks, documents is available in their language that they're able to have. And Gaelic is mostly spoken in the Western Highlands and Western Isles, among other places, but mostly in Glasgow. And now we're going to talk about the arts. The islands and highlands are thriving centuries of art in many levels and forms. There are many different art galleries spread across Scotland. They also have a variety of art festivals throughout the year. So the art festivals that they have are mostly in these cities, from what I could tell by certain pictures and just reading a little bit about it and the way they talked about it. Like the pictures that I saw, unfortunately, I don't think I could use them because they were on a certain website and I was not able to kind of upload it. But, it was huge booths spread out where people could sell their art, where people could see it, and it was just very, very beautiful. And traditional art has a pretty good population. However, outside influences are also increasing in popularity. So with Scotland, they have many different influences, and we'll talk about that the more we go on with certain slideshows that I have. But a lot of outside influences are also very, very a part of Scotland. I think of their culture, I think of their history, and the way they've done things, built things, like the outside comes into play. It's not just, well, we have this and we're going to strictly do this. Like, no, they allow people to come in and they bring their customs and their art, and it's just like they mesh it together. And I think that's really beautiful. And this is the graph I decided to choose. So I decided to go with language. The reason I decided to go with language for Scotland is because I think it's very interesting. Because as you can see right here, I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see me zooming in. But like I said in the other slide when we were talking about language, English is mostly spoken there. Of course, they have like a little accent, certain vocabulary that we may not translate the same. That's really anywhere. But it's funny because Scotland was not always a part of England or the British Empire, United Kingdom. They came together. So it's like they adapted with England because people would go over there. They meshed together and were able to adapt. And their language has, of course, as you can see from the chart, I mean 30% and 1%, it has dropped drastically. And in certain areas and rural areas and older people, of course, they're going to speak the Scots dialect or the Scottish Gaelic. But mostly the younger people coming into the cities, the generations, as it goes on and progresses, of course, English is going to have a higher up. But I mean, we can only assume as time has progressed, those numbers have varied within. We can only imagine like once Scotland and England kind of came together and they merged and Scotland became a part of the United Kingdom. Of course, the English was probably somewhere between 1% and these numbers were higher. I just think it's very interesting to see how whenever they merge together, things change. I mean, and it's not necessarily for the worse or the better, but it's just as time goes on, things get modernized, things change, people change, the places around you changed and how they view things. And really, that's what happened with Scotland as well, with their dialect, with their language. And I just thought that would be very interesting to kind of talk about just a little bit with this graph and kind of showing you like nowadays, like, you know, English 99%, Scots 30, immigrant languages is like 20%, and then the Scottish Gaelic is like 1%. So you can just really see that the Scottish Gaelic is almost a dying language. And it's just very interesting to see. Sorry, my light died. Anyway, the next slide I will talk about is buildings. So I'm going to zoom in actually on this castle, just kind of letting you guys see it up close a little bit, as well as this one, the structure of it, and then also this is like a more kind of modern building. I would say it's modern, it's just a little more clean and pristine rather than these two. Well, not really this one. I would say it's kind of clean and pristine, but that's besides the point. So, Scotland's architecture is derived from many different styles across the world. You can tell by the many different styles and designs of each structure. They were able to adapt and build off what was popular at the time to create architecture that is vast in range. Even today, Scotland has a blend of old and new styles. They have also been able to preserve the many forms that still stand today that was able to shape the country through the centuries. And that's what really draws me to Scotland, because they have so many castles that you can go visit and see that are that centuries old and is beautiful, and they have taken care of those structures. They have preserved them as time has went on. But really, I mean, as you can see, most of these structures are made of stone. They're built to last. It's not like how some structures, like for instance, I know England, maybe even America back in the 15th, 16th century, going on based off of that, things were just built very differently, wooden structures, things like that. But it's just very interesting to see. And even the new structures that they do hold, they're very beautiful. It's something that is really breathtaking. And really, the buildings, as I said before, so whenever Scotland kind of merged together, they would bring influences outside and look at the new trends that were going on, whether it be in England or little countries surrounding them, that would take influence from that and also carry it over, which is why Scotland has so many different styles of buildings, castles. It's because they weren't stuck in one thing. They adapted to change. Next is going to be dancing. So this is kind of a little close-up of the pictures as well of the dancing. And dance is common to all culture, and this is especially true of the people of Scotland, who take their traditional form of dance very seriously. We can date far back with the dancing in Scotland, and through all that time, different forms and variations have come out as well. And each dance that I kind of named, it has its own specific ending and beginning. Normally there's 4 categories that Scottish put their traditional dancing in, and one of them is the country dancing and Highland dancing. It's the Breton step dancing, and the Celodith dancing. And some of these dances can be easily learned. They can be done in groups or even in solo, and some even in social gathering. It depends on what category of dance is going on, and it really depends on what event you're going to, like how we talked about earlier, the Celodith, which is a social gathering. So one of these dances would be where you do that dance. You do it in a group, you do it in a gathering. And then there's other times where maybe you're doing a performance and you have a solo act. You could do a traditional dance like one of those. It just all depends and it all varies. Next is music. There are so many varieties used and enjoyed in Scottish music today. However, we think of Scottish music, mostly the soul-stirring, eerie music that they play with varied instruments come to mind. While traditional Scottish music and traditional Irish music serve to influence each other, they are both very different from each other. Essentially, these tunes, whether they be cheerful or eerie, are combined with Gaelic lyrics and few musical compositions. Recently, the traditional music has been more modernized to fit and appeal with the younger generation, as well as the singers and songwriters of Scotland have also gotten more modernized to fit with the tune across the world. So, Scotland, as we've talked about before, it just really adapts to its surroundings. I don't think it tries to stay in the past. It doesn't try to stay right within its realm. It just really adapts to what's going on around or what's happening in the now. So, and it's the same way with its music. But their traditional music still has a place. However, it's just really done in certain and special occasions. The next is road signs. So I'm kind of going to zoom in on these road signs for you. Here goes the speed camera ahead. This is the little otter crossing sign. This is the speed limit sign, and this is like a hazard sign. So Scotland is just like America. They have various traffic symbols and variations of them. You just have to study and pay attention. That's really wherever you go and you know you're going to be driving. That's anywhere, whether you're going to Scotland, England. You need to pay attention to the roads. It can be easy, but also it is something you need to be attentive to. You need to pay attention while driving. So most of the symbols are easy to figure out. However, some areas have different signs we may not see every day. I know here I've never seen a watch for toads sign, otters or ponies. The reason being is because Scotland has a lot of farm life and animals that are free range and are able to roam everywhere. So being cautious of them while traveling will do you some good. Other things you may need to look out for are signs letting you know when it is a passing zone, since some roads are one ways, and be wary of various potholes in the countryside you may encounter. And like I said, I feel like Scotland really prepares you, because I'm going to come back up here to the speed camera ahead. I'm going to tell you right now. In America, they do not tell you that there is a speed camera ahead. At least I've never seen it, and I like to say I pay attention, but they have a lot of signs just stating everything that is going on and everything that is happening when you are driving. So I feel like they really like to prepare you for certain situations. So norms and folkways. So Scots tend to be very soft-spoken and private people. From the information I've gathered, Scottish people are more reserved and respectful when it comes to being out in public and meeting new people, or people they may know. They like minimal talking in public to keep from interrupting others, and they like to keep a low tone rather than talking loudly. Scottish people are very proud people of their culture, so learning and knowing about their culture would help get into the conversation. Just remember to refrain from making any inappropriate jokes or comments about their culture. They also like to keep a high level of professionalism when it comes to work. And flowers. Once winter fades away, that is when the spring flowers come in bloom. With the variations of different fields, there are many different flowers that can grow. While some of the gardens you may visit will be carefully cultivated, others may be wild and a hodgepodge of color and brilliant green canvases. So, really, depending on where you go, whether you decide to travel to the countryside of Scotland, you could see these big, large fields that are in bloom. It has so much greenery, it has different variations of flowers, whether they be pink, purple, blue, yellow. I mean, and it could just be wild. And then on the other hand, you could be visiting castles or even maybe even government buildings, certain buildings, and then you see little gardens that are cultivated. They're actually strategic. They're taking care of their place. They're not as wild. They're more taken care of. But either way, it's beautiful. Either way, both are beautiful and stunning. And tools. So this right here is one of the tools I would be talking about. And also the bagpipes are another tool I would be talking about. So the first tool I would be talking about is actually the kettle that you just saw, and it is copper. It's actually a kitchen utensil, and it is called a fish kettle. As the name says, it was used to cook fish. One of the special parts about this kettle is the drainer. It allows the fish to be easily removed from the pan without breaking it. I think that's pretty inventive. I know, like, we have stuff now, but I believe when I was reading up on this, not this specific picture, of course, but the history said that whenever they had found a book in one of the books that was kept, the fish kettle was listed as it, and it was dated back years and years and years and years and years. So I think that's very like inventive, really, because it's kind of easier, right? Just like, okay, I'm gonna place the fish down in here. I don't have to worry. I can just pick it up. It's fine. I can put it on a plate. I think that's really cool. The other tool is the bagpipes, like I had said. This instrument became known as the instrument of war for a period of time in Scotland history. Usually the bag was made of some type of animal skin, but as time has progressed and changed, there are different alternatives to how the bag is made. And this one right here, from what I could see, or what it said, this one is supposed to be an 18th century one, so more than likely this bag was actually made of animal skin rather than the alternative measures that people take today. Alright, and now we're going to get into some rules. So here are a couple of rules that are interesting in Scotland. The first one I would like to talk about is you need to let someone use the toilet if they knock on your door, which is a little out there. However, there is no actual document or paperwork that actually says you have to do this. It really just stems from the fact of the Scots like to be hospitable. And then the other rule is no such thing as manslaughter. Now, before anybody gets any ideas, you cannot go to Scotland and you cannot commit a crime and not get in trouble. And the reason I put this one in here is because it comes back to how, yes, Scotland has adapted to it merging and new things coming in. However, it still has its old words and language that it does use it and carries into today. So the actual word that they use instead of manslaughter is this word right here, culpable homicide, I think. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right, but it pretty much has the same meaning as manslaughter. You would just get charged with that rather than it saying manslaughter. But I thought that was really interesting how you cannot be charged with manslaughter. However, you can be charged with that, which is pretty much the same thing. So just gotta know your rules whenever you're traveling. And government. And since Scotland is a part of the United Kingdom, their main authorities is the British Prime Minister. However, they also included in the British Parliament. Scotland is also divided into 32 councils, so like 32 different little areas as well. And in those areas, there are little villages, rural areas, and in that process, people can actually elect others. And whenever you do get elected for that, you pretty much just have specific tasks that you have to do that you oversee. And artifacts. So these little artifacts are the Lewis chess pieces. I'm going to kind of zoom in and let you see them. There was 93 pieces found in 1831 on the beach at Uig, Lewis, Scotland. So this was a great historic find, especially them being preserved the way they are, and they are in a museum in Scotland as well. So it's really great that the people were able to find them, because it gives a hindsight of, okay, these are the chess pieces that were used. This is what they look like. This is how they were made. And it wasn't just little pieces like this. If I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me correct, there were like boards as well and little pieces that they had drawn on. So it gave a little more insight of, oh, well, this is how the chessboard looked. This is kind of how they played. And also something else to know is whenever they would play chess, it was to show their intelligence and skills, especially regarding war strategies. So it just wasn't like a game how we play. Of course, chess we know is a skillful game, but they really used it as, okay, you need to play this game. You're showing me how smart you are. We're battling against each other, and I'm going to kind of see how your war tactics are. We're going to see how intelligent you really are. So I thought that was also very interesting. And this is my kind of ending. Like, all in all, Scotland has a great culture. It has a great background. There's so much more that there could be talked about, but of course we can't make anything too long. It's just a great country to research. They have so much rich history and culture, and they really come together in the end. I think they merge really well with other cultures as well. They bring them in, they invite them, they're welcoming, and they adapt. They're able to adapt to what's going on, even the people around them. Like, it's not like they're pushing it out. They're allowing it to come in. They're allowing it to merge together as one. And this right here is my reference page. I unfortunately could not get all the references on here, so I did have to make another slide. And these are all of my references that are listed. And it is in APA format. I made sure it was. However, it did not translate like that, but we will get that. But this is everything that I use, and I mostly used websites. But thank you for listening, and I hope you learned a little bit or something interesting about Scotland, and I hope you enjoyed.